it is like to scale a business in a different environment. Now, it's time to see what it takes to actually build a unicorn. What is the mindset in order to build a billion-dollar industry company, and what the actual entrepreneurs behind unicorns think and act. For that said, for the unicorn mindset, I will have with me Christian Dorffer, founding general partner of Defiance Capital, and Sofia Nunes, co-founder of Mambu. Let's give them a very big round of applause.
Why don't you sit here?
Yeah.
And then I'll sit over here. Thank you, thank you. It wasn't so easy to convince Sofia to come all the way from Madeira in Portugal to Greece, but I'm really happy that she managed to find the time. Sofia is one of the few female entrepreneurs in Europe that have actually built a unicorn from scratch. And there are only 2 in Portugal, and there's 1 in Finland, and so it's pretty unique. And what's also unique is that Sofia started out by studying psychology, and after exiting her company, she became a founder coach, and she's built a business to coach founders. So it's a pretty unique opportunity that we have her here today. But rather than me telling you a story, I would love for you to kind of share your story with the audience.
Thank you, Christian. Well, it's a story of serendipity and of saying yes to opportunities, really. I come from a family where there were no entrepreneurs, no entrepreneurship as such, so no role models in my family. I was also the first one to study abroad. I went to the US to do a master's in human-computer interaction, and that ended up being the switch, the trigger to found Mambu. So the idea came up from that master's. I met my 2 co-founders during the master's, and from then on, it was a sequence of saying yes to things. It was basically, let's start this company. We have the idea, we have the research done. Why don't we start a company? Yes. Should we move to Canada, where one of the founders is from, Portugal, or Germany? Let's analyze. Germany was the most realistic in terms of ecosystem at that point. Let's move to Germany. So the one from Canada, me from Portugal, let's start the company in Germany. We started actually in Stuttgart, so a smaller city down south, and after the Series A, we decided to move to Berlin, where more opportunities would come, also easier for hiring and to attracting both investors as well as a team. The company went through many stages. It's the typical roller coaster. We struggled in the beginning, financially, chaos, all that most founders would identify with. And eventually we found our north, and this was a mix of luck, a mix of good advisors, a mix of seeing where the opportunity was, and again, saying yes to those opportunities, and focus. I would also argue that focus had a huge impact in what we built. Also the courage, I would say, to pivot. We were not always on the same path. When we started the company, we had a different path, very focused on microfinance, and eventually that was not the path for us. We decided to expand and have that courage to pivot.
Your kind of transition from living in Lisbon to moving to the US, how did you come across the opportunity, right? Because there are not that many people in Lisbon, certainly at that time, that went to study in the US.
No. And again, this was just serendipity at its best. I was actually, started working in Lisbon, then worked in Porto after graduating in clinical psychology. At that point, I wasn't finding opportunities that were fulfilling. I wanted to build my psychology practice, and that was not available due to the market crisis that was going at the moment. And I decided to return to Madeira, just look for what else could be in the island where I was born. And it was out of a random meeting, a session with a university professor who was talking about this master's, and it was available to people from different from different backgrounds, so psychology, social sciences, computer science, design, and business. And if we would apply and get the scholarship, we would have the whole tuition paid for. That was what I needed to hear. I immediately, again, say yes to that, start applying, start doing the work to get the scholarship, was lucky to get it ultimately, moved to the US, spent 6 months there as part of that program, the remainder in Madeira. It was a joint program with the university in Madeira. Doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but again, it was life-changing to me.
It's so interesting because this is a story that founders in Greece would also, recognize, because programs are coming to Greece, opportunities are coming to Greece. Greece is not the whole world. There are so many opportunities to learn abroad and come back. How did you use studying psychology and building a fintech? It almost sounds like an oxymoron.
And it is. And the funny thing is that none of us had a background in finance and fintech. We didn't even talk much about fintech back then. But we took a chance. We had good advisors. We had a product that we believed in. We had a very, very committed team, and I will never stop saying this. The team is everything. And we had a really committed team. We were lucky enough to gather amazing people from all sorts of background, and we learned. And we kept learning and constant challenging ourselves to learn more, and that's eventually what turned it out.
And you use your psychology background to, design your processes both for hiring and building culture, and it turned out to be very effective, right? But and now you're a full-time coach. You're coaching young founders not only about themselves but also how to build culture. Coaching for many people is something that certainly when I was growing up was not something I even thought about. It's almost like if you need a coach, there's something wrong with you, right? But athletes have coaches, and now some of the best founders have coaches. But maybe you can tell us, what is founder coaching and why is it so important?
Let's start with the coaching part first and demystify a bit. I struggled with that also with a psychology background, because people will only go to a psychologist. We're talking about 20 years ago, when something was wrong. And yes, that's true. And it's also true when you want to improve on something, on some aspect of your mental health. With a coach, the difference is we don't go as deep on the mental health. So if there's an underlying issue such as depression or something else that puts your baseline out of balance, we don't go so much there. Coaching is it's a process that you're working with someone else in order to take them from where they are now to where they want to go. With a caveat that obviously they need to have control over all the variables that will take them there. Because of course, if you tell me you want to be a millionaire tomorrow, we can have a session of 10 hours today, and I'm sure that's not going to happen if the variables are not in place. So that's it's a collaboration, it's a collaborative process. It's like having someone on your team. It's like having a space to think. It's how I like to think about it. A coaching session is a space to think, and for founders especially, this is so crucial. You don't have time and space to think. And when you work with a coach, you can just bring any topic for that session. It's something, okay, there's an important meeting coming, there's a conversation I need to have, this is really important, and I need time to get it all aligned and be prepared. So let's use this session for that. Usually there's an overall goal, so for X amount of sessions, let's work towards this bigger goal, but on each session we can work independently from that goal, always with that in mind. So the goal of coaching is always to move you forward. There's always action at the end of a session. It's not a stagnant session.
I think it's so valuable, right? Because there's no shortage of short videos on social media telling you what to do, smart investors who think they know how to run a company or your company telling you what you should do, and you're bombarded with all this input all the time, right? And I think coaching is also about just helping you create this space for making the right decisions. And when I was coached the first time, one of the things I was a bit surprised about was, well, she's not telling me anything. I have this session and I am expecting to be guided on something, and it's completely different. Maybe talk a bit about the actual process. What's the experience like?
Yes. It's very different from a mentoring session. So experience with a mentor, you look for a mentor when you need guidance, when you need advice, and usually the mentor is someone who has been through what you are going right now, hopefully not too far, not in a distant past, but recently, and it's a few steps ahead. So you look for a mentor when you need some guidance, and the mentor will give you that guidance. A coach is there more to ask you questions and to have you coming with 2 insights on your own. And in my case, because I'm coaching founders, I actually have a mix of both, because I want, obviously, the person in front of me to come up with their own answers, because there's huge value on that instead of me telling them what to do. Now, if I see that they're stuck and there's something I know based on my experience that I can share and move them forward again towards their goal, I will ask for permission and then share that. So I actually use a mix of mentorship and coaching, which is in pure coaching you wouldn't do.
Let's talk about a little bit about the kind of typical situations as startup founder experiences that where coaching can be helpful. And Sofia is working with some of our portfolio companies, coaching the founders in those companies. And one example, and one of the things that investors always worry about, is founder fallout. You know, most companies, they don't die because they, have external pressure. It's because the founders stop, wanting to work together, and it's fall apart. So a lot of coaching is with founder teams, right? Can you talk a bit about that particular case, but also maybe 1 or 2 other typical cases that founders go through that you coach them on?
Yeah, conflict is very common, especially at some stages of a company. New investment came, so new source of stress, and all of a sudden, the stressful response is on everyone. And that takes a different shape depending on the person. So the ways of communicating, communication styles, some retreat, some want to talk, and the other one retreats, and they don't know I have a case like this. It's actually one of the founders wanting to understand, so what's going on, and there was a crisis, and the other founder just retreated. No communicating about that, and they're in different time zones even, which doesn't make things easier. So it's a lot about first understanding the baseline, again, what the communication is like, what the problems are, what's the vision, and connecting them with that vision and finding the common ground. So where are you when things are going well? How do you communicate? And try to bring that to the session and understand, okay, so once crises happen, because they will happen, how can we build systems and create structures that will help you, knowing now that you are aware that this is how you communicate, how you act when you're under stress. How can we create these systems and structures to protect your communication as founders, which is key. So that's one very common aspect, is the conflict. And then blind spots that entrepreneurs, founders also have, which is one very close to my heart, is signs of burnout. You don't immediately realize that you're facing or getting very close to burnout, and this is very common. We, as founders, and especially early stage founders, but at any stage, if you are not aware of what can cause burnout, you're there at all times. You're in high stress, chronic stress for extended periods of time, cortisol flooding your mind and your body, and what this is doing to your mind is actually you're not operating with your frontal lobe anymore, the one that's responsible for executive functions, for strategic thinking, from long-term planning. You're working with your amygdala, which is fear-based, and you're just reactive. And when that happens, you don't immediately realize, but you also need a reset button. And with coaching, what we do very often is to, again, I'm like a mirror for the founder. It's like, this is going on. I see, okay, there's a lot going on, and this is your reaction to it. How can we work together in order to bring that down? You need to bring that cortisol level down in order to start making better decisions and to start that strategic thinking. And this very often comes with the need to pause and to create a pause in whichever shape and form that is. It could be actually pausing, stepping away, leaving for a week and not being connected to your phone or to anything, but it could also mean just find a hobby, do a sport, go kickboxing, do something that takes your mind away from that. Otherwise, your strategic thinking will be highly compromised.
At Defiance Capital, we spend a lot of time trying to kind of peel back all the layers of the onion to understand what makes the highest potential founder. And we find that the most successful companies often have different founder types. They all need to have that kind of crazy, almost sociopath, crazy person, but then there needs to be someone to balance it out, and as a team, it needs to work really well. And one of the things that I see, that I also see with some of the most successful athletes in the world, is that they need to be flexible in recognizing things and learning quickly and adopting. How do you have conversations with founder teams where you have all these different personalities, and how do you get them to play ball? Because also, it takes years to build something successful, and people go through different things. So in year one, they're all fired up, they're best friends. In year 2, year 3, things start to emerge. And then the most successful companies tend to have a reset where they find each other again. They maybe change their roles a little bit, and then they go to that next stage. Can you talk a bit about that?
It's the identity, right? Your identity shifts from the beginning till you evolve as a company. And it's about understanding that how you personally will shift, how your identity will change from the doer. Usually you have too many hats, too many things to do, overwhelmed, stressed, to the more strategic planning. Once you start hiring a team, having experts around you, when you can delegate, and how does your identity react to this also? Can you evolve with that, or do you resist? And there's an amazing article now a few years ago, I think, by Molly Graham. She worked for Google and Facebook, and it's about giving away your Legos. So in the beginning, you're building a company, you're scaling, and just have all of the pieces of Legos, and you're building your own tower. Then you realize, oh, it's too much to handle. You start hiring good people to help you, but all of a sudden you need to get away from your Legos and give them, and that's really hard. And you want to just bring them back again. So how do you normalize this as a founding team in order to give away your Legos faster, allow those people to build their own towers and focus on different parts of the business, which is mandatory.
How important is culture in how you coach founders? Because just to make a simple comparison, for instance, King.com, whose founders I work for, they built Candy Crush. They were very strict with having like an 8-to-5 work culture. It doesn't matter if there's work to be done, everybody leaves at 5, because for them it was really important that people maintain a balance in life and came back the next day super fresh. But then while they were working, it was like super tough in those hours. And also that Scandinavian model really values people challenging opinions and people being flexible, whereas in the Anglo-Saxon world, like in the UK, it tends to be long hours. You start when you're right after college, and you don't really get decision-making power until you reach a director level. So when you're coaching a founder from Sweden versus Portugal versus UK, is there a difference in how you are coaching them?
It depends on what they bring. It's always depending on what they bring, and the topics tend to be similar. what you notice in the hustling cultures, let's say, is more tendency to have overwhelm as a blind spot. They don't realize they're completely full-on close to burnout because it's the doing more without realizing. And eventually, they only realize when they reach the stage when there's a disengagement. All of a sudden, either physically they start getting the consequences of constantly building the cortisol in their bodies, or the exhaustion on the other side, which is disengagement, becoming cynic, like, what am I doing this for? What's happening? I'm not engaged anymore, I'm out of purpose, and that's another sign of burnout. So that's what I see more often in cultures where hustling is more present. Otherwise, it depends on what they bring, yeah.
What is the best way for founders in this audience to get started with coaching, to learning about it, maybe doing a trial? What's the best way to get started?
First, it's really important to have chemistry with a coach, you will find. So it's not that all coaches coach the same way, and it's not that all coaches will connect the same way with
and there's
each
like lots of
individual
different
founder.
qualifications as well.
Sorry.
Everybody's a coach on LinkedIn, you
Yes,
know?
yes. So there's accreditation, there's certification, so you need to be very, very mindful of that, seeing what type of credentials the coaches out there have. And then it's about booking a call. Most of them will offer a free call, so that you can test chemistry and see if there's a fit. And if there is, and if they can help you, then it's easy to start.
So really some golden nuggets from one of Europe's first and only female unicorn founders about coaching and managing your time well. So thank you so much, Sofia. I encourage everybody to reach out to Sofia afterwards. There's so much to learn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.